Get their friends and fads, whether you like it or not. You can go your own way, but feminists will always find a way. Feminism is on the rise around the world. Traditional cultures are being eroded every day. Some for the good, some for bad, more for the worst. Whereas cultures, once rich in achievement, have become stagnant and even going backwards. Feminism gave the rise of communism around the world. These were all predictable outcomes. Authors for centuries have been warning about collectivism. The most famous, of course, is George Orwell's Animal Farm and 1984. There's also Alex Huxley, who even spoke about the dangers of authoritarianism at Berkeley, and mistakenly and shameful to his own shame, he even helped the free speech movement at Berkeley, which of course gave rise to the Berkeley Weather Underground and many and communism and the takeover of Berkeley by radical liberals. See, this is what most people don't understand. This is why Animal Farm and 1984 are often viewed as simplistic takes on complex issues. Now, the rise of feminism, of course, I'm not saying, is solely to blame on these books. These books were merely warnings, right? But let's take a look at feminism in South Korea. Now, it is spread through radical movements. 4B, Escape the Corset. Now, the 4B movement is a radical feminism movement based on the 4Bs in Korea that they translate to no dating, no sex, no marriage, no childbirth. Escape the Corset is a rejection of beauty, where women wear no makeup, destroy their hair, destroy their appearance, deliberately become obese, and deliberately take on toxic personas around men. It is, of course, the underlying cause is misandry. Women have a perception that society is misogynist, and therefore revenge on society is a paramount survival technique. They claim that they suffer constant sexual harassment and cultural expectations put to prioritize family over career. You know, you are nothing. You yet in the collective. Yet here they are, trying to create both the collective and the individual, where you're both empowered and a victim. Where as long as you choose the feminist mindset, you are free to pursue whatever career you want. But that is a zero-sum. Treating society as a zero-sum game. It's where you have to achieve everything for what? At the end of the day, you die, you're put in the ground, and you've achieved nothing, right? Everything is not. Feminism is nothing but a centralization of power into the hands of the few for the oppression of the masses. And of course, feminists make huge money. But in Korea, feminist is a slur. It is a backlash. You name someone in the workplace as a feminist, they are isolated. No one will be alone with them. No one will talk to them, except for the brief encounters at work. People will avoid them and not include them. They'll forget to invite them to meetings, and eventually boycott the individual from future projects. Women, such as 4B, were effective because they had law, they had the media, they had the culture, right? They had the big movie, big names behind them. They had politicians behind them. But as with everything, radicals never stop at the handful of cases. No, they always have to go for revenge on society, where they have to become increasingly powerful and control society and destroy what they call entrenched patriarchal norms. What normal people say, the continuance of the species. They want to destroy family. They want to destroy relationships. They want men to be nothing but crushed beneath their high heels. They do not care about anyone or anything other than their thirst for power. Everything always has to be increasingly radical to increase, and often I would say it's not so much power, but thirst. A thirst for power, a thirst for revenge, a thirst for that thrill of ruining someone. And there are many names for it, but let's just say what it is. Selfish, right? They are narcissists. But anti-feminism has created many new social problems in South Korea, and they are spreading around the world. Phenomenon is economic anxiety. You can go your own way, but in the workplace, if you're not part of the men's club or the men's group, and you think you can be an isolated individual, just do your own thing, you will be targeted by feminists for bullying under the protection of the state as a protected class. South Korea's job market is highly competitive, and this is echoing around the world where there's more and more youth unemployment and growing unemployment amongst the youth. You see men seeing women given an advantage as unfair. Women entering the workplace do not produce families. They do not produce net social benefit. A man will have a family. He provides. He builds. Women tear down. They consume. They ultimately only care about themselves. This, of course, is generalizations, but it is what it is. Right? Women and their hypergamy, particularly people who claim they married young, then they hit the proverbial wall, no longer feel attractive, no longer feel productive, no longer feel wanted, are often perceptions based solely on paranoia. These perceptions have created so much anxiety in society that women demanding more and more health care and more wanting to build these expensive therapists to the state, taking time off from work for their anxieties. They are actually becoming less productive, right? Women are already less productive. And thanks to feminism, women are becoming even more so. The average girl boss is 50% less productive than her male counterparts. And this is actually dragging society down, where women will spend hours arguing the language and intent and trying to achieve equitable outcomes for everyone, where men are just looking for the best outcome. And historically, if it is the men who have proven right, but it's because of this collective power in culture right now. And of course, most men see the problem not so much as women, but the men who get on their knees. The white knights, whatever you want to call them, the cuckolder, the male feminist, or simply the pragmatist who just too cowardly to stand up for himself. But the rise of women's activist groups, the two worst offenders being 4B and Escape the Corset, consider the destruction of society as a net good, as a positive towards a better world, which they cannot describe, which they cannot, and if you cannot describe it, which they cannot accept if they, no responsibility if they're wrong, right? There's no punishment for them if they are wrong. There's no recompense, no jail time, no financial punishment for all the damage they've done to society. Just look at the net cost of protests. All their protests are a net loss of labour, a net loss of production, a net loss of income, net loss of revenue, a waste of resources for the state, dealing with the crime wave where feminists go on rampages, destroying male-dominated businesses, where they go through department stores wrecking beauty products. Now, the biggest, of course, is political exploitation. Men are increasingly becoming aware that feminism is nothing more than a political grift, both for the left and the right, where you have conservative politicians promising to dismantle the gender based programs, and you have liberals and left-wing and communists all promising to dismantle the patriarchy, and where you have both sides merely exploiting for votes, where they know if they achieve anything of significance, they cannot undo it, or they cannot go against it, nor can they actually achieve anything lasting. Everything has to fall apart. Otherwise, you have no political action. And without political action, now in Korea they've had some achievements, particularly getting rid of gender equality programs to some extent. But however, the problem is women keep making stuff up like cyberbullying, or where, however, men are increasingly even if nothing happens, they're increasingly reporting man haters, or you have now physical bullying, where women in small groups will attack men. This is increasingly, of course, leading to closures of what's used to be at the night when the strip comes alive, where the restaurants and bars and clubs would open late. Now these strips are devoid of young men and nothing more than predatory women looking for who increasingly drunk, disorderly, public urination. It's driving the tourists away. It's driving the young men away. The young men who used to come looking for female companionship no longer do so, and it's creating even more economic instability. Now, women have also eroded the political discourse, where there is no debate, and they just call you a racist, a misogynist, or a homophobe. Women are increasingly coming out as lesbian. Of course, that's nothing new. The whole feminist movement is based on turning women against men. But families, right? The whole point, people are waking up to the fact that feminism is anti-family, anti-man, anti-success, right? It is to make sure that you, as an individual, cannot achieve success, that you cannot own property. You cannot, because if you do this, somewhat you'll be targeted by a hypergamous woman who will then basically strip you down, lay you out bare, and ruin you in the courts with allegations of rape, sexual abuse. In the workplace, if you don't hire women, you're sued. If you hire women, you end up getting sued for sexual harassment. In Korea, men are increasingly forming groups known as where little brothers and big brothers take care of each other. This is the brotherhood that used to be, right? In the past, you would have the older warriors taking care of the young men, leading them through life, and you would also used to have young women protecting them. Young women used to be scolded and even beaten by older women for being misandrist or disloyal to their husbands. Feminism, right, claims to be about liberation, right? It claims to liberate women from all the unwanted, right? Unwanted sexual attention, unwanted sexual activity, unwanted births, all the things they don't, all the inconveniences of life where they say, I want to be free from the unwanted consequences of my promiscuous behaviour. I don't want society to punish me for being a slut. I don't want punishment for for lying to my husband or stealing from my husband or cheating on my husband. In fact, I don't want my husband once he is no use for me. The state can provide me with free housing. The state can provide me with food, healthcare. And of course, this is leading to a panic as society itself is starting to die, literally die off, right? Where they're now talking about Italy and South Korea becoming non-existent. Because once you reach collapse, there's no coming back, right? There's no getting the old people who regret being feminists to have children again, because they're literally unable to have children. Even look at all the money and resources put into fertility programs for very few results. The challenges today faced by men is, if you are not part of the anti-feminist movement, then you will be pushed aside. Politics does not care the culture, it only cares the outcomes, right? Politicians, at the end of the day, only care they get back into office. Politics is the art of deception, the manipulation of the public to achieve, well, they say political goals always. Politics is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They have these imaginary political goals, which they always imaginarily have to achieve, but they never actually achieve them, right? Equity cannot be achieved. What are you going to do? Have everybody deaf, dumb, and blind and no arms, no legs? I mean, everybody born in a little test tube capsule and made sure they're perfect clones of each other? Even then the outcomes will vary because of the randomness of nature. So what do? They want to control everything. Now, in reality, men are increasingly waking up that while feminism is currently powerful, often radical, and the response, however, though right now is deeply dividing society and has created a cultural hostile landscape, men realize they only have to wait for more and more women to get older and watch them turn from feminist to crybaby. They go on TikTok and cry that nobody likes them. They have no friends. Nobody, because all they get together in these big groups and keep talking about all their past glories and protests, all this cope and seethe. But in reality, they've achieved nothing, right? In essence, all they've done, right, is hurt others for their own satisfaction. And ultimately, when they run out of men to ruin, they turn on each other. And the only time and of course you have groups that are, these bitter old women who just cling together because that's the only thing they've got in common is feminism. And so it's like a nest of vipers, they may be constantly biting and infighting, but they've got nothing. They've got no achievements, they've got no family, even their pets, because they outlive their pets, there's no nothing to be proud of in their life. So Korean men, right, all they need to do is to just basically keep taking care of each other. And however, of course, increasingly Korean girls don't want to end up like these bitter old crones. They realize that family, right, they grew up never, right, they've never had any of these hardships. So and they often see these perceived hardships by feminists as nothing more than a slur against men. Now, I don't know if it's because Gen Z are smarter, or simply because previous generations were so indoctrinated at an early age and feminism was still new. We still hadn't seen the negative consequences. I don't know, but Gen Z is definitely seeing all the negative consequences. And while feminists talk of all these challenges that the patriarchy presents, most young women today are increasingly understanding the patriarchy wasn't about oppressing, but protecting women. Not just from themselves, but from society as a whole. That they were protecting society, that everybody has a role to play. We don't, right? A lot of young girls increasingly feel under pressure to do things they don't want to do, like do science, do math, do all the things they don't want to do simply because someone somewhere wants equity. Someone somewhere wants to sit at their computer screen and see that the number of female scientists, the number of female doctors, the number of female politicians, the number of female CEOs outnumber men. Well, men have all the low-paying, low-skill jobs, and that a secretary gets paid more than a fireman. And women are looking, and young girls particularly look at this and say, no, I want to go back to the days of my husband the fireman, or my husband the bricklayer, or my husband the carpenter, being a valued member of society. I want my husband to be respected by society. And a lot of Korean women who got divorced in their 30s, and even if they had all their fun through their 40s and 50s, they're suddenly now in their 60s. There's no more fun for them. They can't meet their rent. They've burnt through all their savings. They've burnt through their husbands or whatever they could get off other men. And so Korea is not only the flame that lit the torch of radical feminism with the right, I suppose you'd pretty much call 4B either the pinnacle of fourth wave or the beginning of fifth wave feminism. But it's the end. For many, it's enough's enough. And I think, the fact that female rage every day, I think a lot of young girls are just looking and saying, that's exhausting. They don't want to rage every day. They don't want protests every day. They don't want to march about nuclear weapons or they look at South Africa. They look at the outcomes. And a lot of people today never saw or thought about the outcomes. But those who did were ignored. And people today are looking at the older videos and looking at all these protest marches, and they're going, what do you mean London used to be all white? What do you mean Europe was protected by America for the last 50 years? They're looking at Europe now and saying, you're just ungrateful. We shouldn't protect Europe anymore. Most people are saying, right, they would rather make a deal with Russia and let Europe have Ukraine. Let's do a deal with Russia. Let's cut them off. They're ungrateful. They're always nothing's ever good enough. See, feminism, liberalism, communism, they're all based on the principle that nothing is good enough, that everything has to always change. There are no established norms, because as soon as there's an established norm, it's a hostile cultural landscape. But you've got to remember, why did things become cultural norms? Because they were successful. They were the least dangerous, the most efficient governance, family life that people... It's what family life around the world evolved over time. But over time, as women got more comfortable, they got more precocious, they become more radical, and boredom has driven women insane. Without a purpose in life, right? Women turn to radicalism, right? The promise of an easy life lures many in. And this is why you have the male feminists, although many of them are sexual predators who are merely looking to get close to a woman. But the results of feminism, as you can see, in a bitterly divided society, more and more people are siding with men, and the rise of conservatism. Now, I don't mean conservatism like Matt Walsh, the right-wing, the grifter, who has conserved nothing. He whines about family, but he sides with the very people who destroyed family, right? The industrial slave machine, right? that locks men into longer work hours, shorter lifespans, and zero asset, right? You accumulate nothing, you can't save for retirement, and most men never make it to retirement because of industrialized slavery that reeks 9 to 12 hours of our lives out of us, gives us no weekends, gives us terrible holidays, no family time, and rewards ungrateful ingrates to steal your assets under the guise of being the dissatisfied wife. Now, I'm not saying Korea is primed, but it may be one of the first countries in the world as a country to do away with the current divorce laws. These, of course, threaten the very foundation of feminism, not as well as in America, where no-fault divorce is increasingly challenged. Divorce settlements are increasingly decreased or challenged. In some cases, women on the opposite side, they're trying to find new and interesting ways of leeching onto you. So more and more, of course, men are not entering relationships. This, of course, has triggered people like Matt Walsh, who blame MGTOW instead of blaming themselves for the right-wing grift where conservatives conserved nothing. Right? You want to conserve family values? Don't make them mandatory. You want to conserve anti-feminism, right? Make sure, and of course many Koreans see this already and increasingly around the world, that feminism is not about rights but about female supremacy, using the fact that women are less likely to have jobs, more likely to be radicals, more likely to have more free time because they work less, right? Women are less productive, they work less hours, and they're more likely to form collectives, right? Men are waking up to the fact that if you give women what they want, let them fail, right? You don't want men's attention? We give you none. Right? Because we all know the real reason why women don't want these unwanted attention is because they think they were all going to compete for Chad, right? That Chad is not going to use, abuse, and discard them. And so when they are used, abused, and discarded, they take it out on society for not protecting them. But you walked away, right? Feminists have walked away from men, so men walked away from women. Okay? Korea, men, if Korean men were the misogynists and patriarchs of old, women would be locked up in their house and forced to breed. They're not. Men are not the, I suppose, pigs that women make them out to be. But that's the problem, isn't it? I think women are increasingly demanding, begging us to be, right, the threat. It's like the reverse psychology game, right, where they don't want to, where they want to find the most suitable mate, right? So they're going to shit test you all the time. But the problem is, even after you've made a woman, they now shit test you to see if they're going to stay. And they shit test you all the time. There is no, right? And as soon as the honeymoon phase is over, they're bored, they're gone, right? As soon as they run out of shit tests, as soon as they're bored, right? As soon as they've pushed you around enough. So society has to stop tolerating feminism. And I think Korea may lead us forward, not backwards, right? That Korea's record low rate, it may be a problem, but it won't be something that we can't overcome. Men have always overcome problems. Feminists create them. Now, of course, I believe that many countries, including Korea, are looking at cloning and uranine replicators. But the conversation's yet to be had. But there is a large scale, right, research around the world to replicate the womb, artificial wombs. Korea is one of the many countries where there is a natural uterus. It's an artificial uterus, right? It has all the like liquid biobag, basically all the nutrients, all the protection, warmth, and comfort of that a gestating fetus needs. Now, how it works is that it has artificial amniotic fluid. This keeps the fetus in a sterile, clean environment. The artificial placenta acts as an artificial organ that oxidates the blood, removes carbon dioxide, bypassing the needs for their underdeveloped young lungs, right? So the baby can basically rest without having to, and not breathe without panic. Something, of course, nutrient waste exchange, and of course advanced monitoring, air pressure, temperature, and of course the nutrient levels. One of the current goals, they have to overcome the main problem of early gestation, right? If the environment can actually, can actually cause babies to be born prematurely. Something goes wrong, so they the technology, of course, is complicated, but you don't need a woman. You only need a man. The fetus, they take the sperm, put it into a clump of cells that replicate the environment, including an artificial ova, and there's the question about who's responsible for the fetus? Because ethical debates, right? Women say no, you can't take motherhood from us. Well, you have, right? Feminism has destroyed motherhood. China and more authoritarian countries like China, including Russia, are looking at this technology and saying, yeah, if the birth rates continue to fall, we'll definitely have to get rid of women. Can't rely on women because they're short, right? The few women they can rely on will become egg donors and child bearers. Children will become an industrial property of the state. And I think ultimately that is the aim, right? Feminism wants to turn. You've seen this with Hillary Clinton, raise all children to be raised by the state. That was, I think, in the 90s. There are many, I think a book was called It Takes a Village. Now, she's not the only one. But I think these anti-feminist collectives are probably the only solution to feminism. That unless someone comes up with something better, right, the state will get its way. The state does not care about feminism, right? Once feminists are old, they are discarded. They are useless to the cause. They are a problem, a pest, a nuisance who cannot accept, right? They're like feminists, like, look at them, right? It was just about the vote or gay rights. It's just about gay marriage. We want to be left alone. Now it's all in your face, funding, gender ideology, right? Particularly any radical ideology will always go too far. This is where anti-feminism is the solution. You have to bring back to the center. Of course, there are many things in Western society. We just have to let them die out. Let feminism go through the generational cycle. In 3 generations, they'll be gone. You have to, whatever family units are left, you nurture, raise, and therefore you'll have to have big farm factory type complexes where large families produce the next generation to avoid extinction, which means we have to end foreign aid, end migration, but the problem right now is governments, because they chase the vote. But you see, where governments don't need the vote, right, and don't have to pander to the people, right, they can come up with solutions faster and better to the very problems their politics created. Whereas the right can't come up with answers, because all the answers and problems come from the left, and because the right cannot fundamentally exist without the left, whereas the left can fundamentally exist without the right, even though the right keeps saying, oh, we can exist without you. Well, prove it, right? Cut them out. No, I think most people want to come back to the centre, and the only way to do that is the radical, right? It's not left or right, but the radical, right? Radical feminism, right? Just isolate them, right? You want to be a radical feminist? There you go. Go into California and let them collapse. Let the animal farm play out, and you'll end up with the pigs sitting around the table wanting to do deals because they realise they cannot create, they cannot achieve solutions to anything but their own problems, right? And they are the cause of their own problems. There is no equity. There is no equal outcome for all, right? There is feminists caged up in California, and the rest of the world gets along quite nicely and just watches them. But, no more funding for Hollywood. See, feminism is a rich woman's indulgence, really. It's politics. It's poison. It is Schrodinger's woman. She's equally empowered and equally the victim. But ultimately, man is the workhorse, feminism is the pig, and the farmer is the state. And the pig wants all the means of production and all the luxuries of production, but all the burden on the working man. So, however you go your own way, there are lessons to be learnt where you have to, for your own sanity, survival, become at least a member of a group. Choose wisely, because if you don't and you end up an isolated individual, you are prey for the predator. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. What do you think? Comment below. Please like, share and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or in my profile. You can scan the QR code on the screen to get my link tree. See you in the next video, and bye for now.